I think there's a sense of community here.
I think the University of Washington is probably one of the most important treasures in the city of Seattle. It's a community in itself, and I'm proud to be a graduate from that wonderful community.
For me, the University of Washington is really an investment in the future, both my own personal future and the future of all of us here in the community.
Quality. I think this school has a lot of quality people, quality programs in and out of athletics and academics, and a lot of pride.
The University of Washington is a national leader, if not the national leader, in the issues of gender equity. This is where it's happening for women's sports. It just doesn't get any better than the University of Washington.
A university that has demonstrated over the years its commitment to racial and ethnic and cultural diversity. It's an institution that clearly prepares young people for life in the 21st century.
The University of Washington, nestled between the Cascade Mountains and Puget Sound. Surrounded by water and trees, it's one of the most beautiful campuses in the nation. It's also the center for advanced education and research. Nobel Prize winners enhance the faculty, along with members of the National Academy of Science. Graduates have received many honors, and some have even viewed the campus from orbit. The U has come a long way since it opened its doors as the University of the Territory of Washington in 1861. Abraham Lincoln was president. The first shots had been fired in the Civil War. Washington was the last frontier, and Seattle a small, struggling town whose founders had only a few years before gotten off the boat. But they had dreams, and a university was one of them.
Well, it's really an amazing story. It's the oldest state university on the West Coast, and began just 12 years after the settlers first arrived here to join the Indians who were here.
Dreams are nice, but in reality, not everyone in this struggling territory thought a university was needed. Seattle was just another small sawmill town on Puget Sound, competing with other small towns to become the big city. One way to get there was to get civic projects. The most prized was the state capitol. Lesser prizes included the state penitentiary, land office, and the university. Olympia was the biggest town in the territory, a bristling 800 residents. They had the capital and wanted to keep it. Seattle was a drab, soggy little town of about 300. But some Seattle pioneers also had dreams. Dreams of taking the capital away from Olympia? There then began some classical political horse trading over what town would get what. One of Seattle's early founders, Arthur Denny, put a bid in for the university. But it was thought at the time that this was a bargaining ploy to trade for the capital. But another pioneer, the Reverend Daniel Bagley, said no. Or in his words, the university is a heap better than the capital. So in the end, Olympia kept the capital, Seattle got the university, and Walla Walla eventually got the penitentiary. History will sort out who won. Denny and the pioneers did a lot more than talk. In what was to become known as the Seattle Spirit, they built a fine university. Denny, along with two others, donated 10 acres of prime land. It had a great view of Puget Sound and was up on a knoll. It became known as Denny's Knoll. The only complaint, it was out in the woods, way out of town. But Seattle could be proud of the campus.
It turned out that having a university here was a wonderful thing, because it, as they used to say when they would come in here, they said, these people are serious. They've built a university. Never mind that they don't have any students, but they built a university. And this was a rather classy building, the original one.
That site is now in the heart of downtown Seattle. And if you want to visit, spend the night. It's the site of one of Seattle's better hotels, the Olympic Four Seasons. and the university still owns the land, so Arthur Denny's gift still brings revenue into the university today. But when it opened, the university was mainly known for housing the town bell.
Denny Bell came around the horn in 1862, was placed in the belfry of the original territorial university where the Olympic Hotel now stands. And that was not only the university's bell, but it was the town bell. It was rung on important occasions. It was rung when Lincoln died. It was rung when Arthur Denny died. And they even used it to help ships find the middle of the harbor in the fog.
So Seattle had a bell, the territory a university. It just didn't have any students. So the first president, Asa Mercer, had to go out recruiting. Mercer hired 2 Indians and a canoe and visited every logging camp within 400 miles. He recruited a dozen students. It's a good thing many came from logging camps because besides their studies, they earned money by cutting cordwood for a steamer, a sort of work-study program of the day. And Washington was co-ed from the beginning, with many women in the first class. There had been some doubt in the legislature whether the territory needed a university, and support was spotty during the early years. Twice, the university had to close its doors. But the Seattle campus eventually proved a big success. The law school was added in 1889, and that out-of-the-way location was fortunate as the campus escaped the Great Seattle Fire. That year, the campus was used for first aid and relief supplies. This was a time of growth. By 1889, Washington was now a state, Seattle a city, and the university was cramped and crowded, where before the complaint was the campus was too far out of town. Now it was the campus was too far downtown. It was time to move from the knoll. The new larger site was found overlooking Lake Washington, but again, way out in the wilderness. The Board of Regents' first job was to find where to put the first building.
They came out here and surveyed it. One of the stories, possibly apocryphal, is that the regents had brought their lunch with them and that they sat down on the highest piece of land and they said, which this is, on the campus, and said, let's do it. Let's build it here.
There was some sentiment to try and bring the old building to the new campus, but it wasn't feasible. But they did bring the graceful Doric columns. They're on campus today. And they brought the Denny Bell. The first building was named after pioneers Mary and Arthur Denny, and both Denny and Daniel Bagley were there for the dedication. Denny Hall is still used today, but at the time, it was the whole university. Labs in the basement, lecture halls on the main floor, and faculty offices above. A major change for the university came in the early 1900s. The campus was chosen as the site of the Alaska-Yukon Pacific Exposition, the World's Fair of its time. It was a major project and brought lasting changes to the university, including major construction and landscaping. The site had remained heavily wooded. Now the trees came down, and the campus was opened up. As one historian put it, the wilderness was pushed back once and for all. Some of the legacy of the AYP remains, such as Rainier Vista and the view of the mountain. Also, the pond. Its original name was Geyser Basin. Then in 1909, a group of playful sophomores began another tradition when they tossed a group of freshmen into the pond. It's been known as Frosh Pond ever since, and a lot of students of all classes have ended up in the pond. Drumheller Fountain was added in 1961. The 1920s was a time when the university became more permanent. Old wooden buildings were torn down, and lasting buildings of stone were built along a style known as Tudor Gothic. It was at this period President Henry Zuzolo convinced the legislature the university was here to stay and needed permanent buildings. This was when the motto of a university of 1,000 years was coined. And through the years, the university has been growing, with major capital construction projects continuing to this day. But a campus is far more than buildings and landscaping. From its beginning, the University of Washington has been a home for scholars. Unlike some universities, buildings on Washington's campus are monuments to academic leadership. The undergraduate library is named for a former president who oversaw major changes during his 15-year administration. Charles Odegaard is credited with improving the research reputation of the university. In pioneer times, the university offered most of the traditional classes of the day, Latin and Greek. One early student said it was much easier to learn Chinook, the Native American trading jargon. But early on, this university offered courses in the sciences. By the 1870s, the Natural Science Department had one of the largest catalog collections of specimens in the nation. In 1892, the university boasted a new telescope with a 6-inch lens. It was the most powerful on the West Coast. One of the most prestigious units at the university is the medical school, and it too has grown through the years.
Well, this place used to be a golf course. You may have heard this was the 9-hole golf course. This is a health sciences center, so the nursing school is here, the dental school is here, the pharmacy school is here, the School of Public Health is here. First, it's a research institution. This is a lot of many of these corridors that you see down here. We're also an institution with a heavy emphasis on primary care, or training people for careers in primary care. We're the medical school for Washington and Alaska and Montana and Idaho, which is a lot of real estate. As some folks like to say, that's about 23% of the landmass of the country when the tide is out.
Basic research in medicine has led to 2 Nobel Prizes. Others have been awarded for work in the fields of physics and economics. Dr. Edward Krebs and his colleague, Dr. Edmund Fisher, won the prize for medicine in 1992. Fisher and Krebs were honored for their work in cell metabolism. For those under 30, that strange instrument in Dr. Fisher's hand is called a slide rule. It may belong in a museum now, but in the 50s and 60s, every lower campus engineering and science student had one. It is used to calculate.
Well, certain kind of calculations is faster for me. When I get, percentages, fractions like that, I just use a slide rule. I always make mistakes when I hit those buttons on the calculator, so I'm used to that. It's very accurate. You don't need electricity, you don't need a battery, it always works.
Among the highlights of the AYP exposition were flights by a lighter-than-air balloon. Not surprisingly, with the influence of the Boeing Company, the university is a center for aeronautical research. The relationship between Boeing and the university is typical of other close ties in industries such as forestry and fishing. When William Boeing was starting his airplane company, he called the university for help. They sent 2 of the top graduate students who went on to become top designers. Boeing financed one of the first wind tunnels in the nation. Built in 1939, it is named for engineering professor Frederick Kirsten. Most of Boeing's bombers were tested in the tunnel. Since then, commercial jetliners also have been tested there. Not only airplanes, they've tested models of the Space Needle and, more recently, Olympic skiers. Airplanes have given way to spacecraft for some University of Washington graduates. Astronauts such as Bonnie Dunbar and George Pinky Nelson are UW grads. In the arts and sciences, there have been many honors. Artist Mark Tobey blended Northwest culture into his painting. Poet Theodore Rothke became the second University of Washington professor to win a Pulitzer. Professor Emeritus Jacob Lawrence is considered a major figure in the visual arts in America. Lawrence's works also hang in the Museum of Modern Art, Whitney Museum, and the Vatican. University of Washington alum Dale Chihuly is considered the world leader in the art of glass blowing. Professor Charles Johnson won the 1990 National Book Award for his novel, Middle Passage. He is an example of the university faculty members who both teach and work professionally.
Well, I think it's much the same between teaching and research over in the sciences. I think probably the best teachers are those who, the night before or the week before, were in the laboratory making some kind of breakthrough, which they bring into the classroom. So their students are not working with people who are rehearsing someone else's ideas, which they could read in a book or in a journal, themselves, but rather they're working with teachers who have just discovered something. It's much the same thing with art or writing. If I make some kind of discovery the night before when I'm writing on a novel or a short story or a screenplay, I have something fresh to bring to my students, fresh ideas.
At the helm of the university recently has been William P. Gerberding. Dr. Gerberding is stepping down, but is leaving a tradition of excellence at the university.
When I became president of the University of Washington, it was fun to be able to say that because it's a high prestige institution. As we often say, there's nothing like it north of Berkeley and west of Minneapolis or west of Chicago, maybe. We are the only really high quality research-oriented university in this whole part of the country. So we're distinctive, we're known, and we're respected. Then in the early 80s, when we suffered our severe budget cuts, I became a kind of object of sympathy. We were the sick man in the industry, and people would go around saying, isn't it terrible what's happening in the University of Washington? Well, we've come out of that and had some recovery. And once again, it's fun to be the president of a university with that much status. It has a certain cachet, and it should.
Husky mascot.
Through the years, the Huskies have taken pride in a strong athletic program. About the time Washington became a state, the university organized its first team sport. No, not crew or football, it was rugby. It could have been different. One professor tried to get the school interested in the more gentle sport of lawn bowling. Just imagine. Yes, imagine forget going to the Rose Bowl. We're number one in lawn bowling. Football was popular in the early days, but so was gold. Some early players left school for the Alaskan gold fields. An observer in the Klondike speculated he could put together a championship team among the miners. And it was a rough game. The flying wedge with arms locked usually produced injuries. One student editor even suggested slugging should be outlawed. By the time Coach Gil Doby came on the scene, football was considered safe, even for children. And it was a more wide-open game with plays such as the forward pass. Washington had its first championship years. In 9 years, the team recorded 53 wins, 3 ties, and no losses.
But my dad played football out here in 1911. He was on the Gil Doby team.
How about that?
Never lost a game, and fantastic. So, it's been a long go-around, a lot of history in this whole thing.
Official homecoming programs right here. Get them while supplies last.
Through the years, each fall, fans have packed Husky Stadium, and there are some traditions special to Washington.
The Husky spirit and the water dog support. Well, the water dogs are part of the activity here at the University of Washington Stadium.
And homecoming brings back fans, no quarterbacks.
I have one thing in common, we're all Huskies. The stadium on that side looks the same. On this side, it's changed dramatically, and that's just a tribute to the great years that they've had here, great coaching. good players out here, and it's nice to be a part of that.
Go Dogs!
Go Dogs!
Washington was co-educational, and women played sports right from the start. One new sport they played was basketball. In 1896, the Washington girls defeated a team from Ellensburg Teachers College. After 30 minutes of play, Washington won by the high score of 2-1. It's safe to say women's basketball and the uniforms have come a long, long way.
We play such an exciting brand of basketball that people just love to come and watch and cheer, and a whole tradition has grown around the sport itself. The love that people have for the University of Washington has a lot to do with our success as well. I think that you can never separate the Husky part of us from the basketball part of us. So we're just having the time of our lives, and I think that this is the greatest place in the whole nation to play this sport.
With a campus located on water, crew was a natural for Washington. Hiram Conabear revolutionized the sport. With George Pocock, they designed a new shell to go faster. Through the years, Washington crews have dominated the sport, winning national championships on numerous occasions, and winning the Olympics in Germany in 1936, and a spectacular win in 1960 over a Russian crew in Leningrad. Women also took to crew early on, and in recent years have launched some of the nation's championship crews. Currently, both men and women compete in many sports, including the latest edition, fast-pitch softball. Through the years, the university has added numerous athletic facilities, so today, all students have an opportunity to keep their bodies in shape, as well as their minds.
If you look on this campus on a daily basis, you will look at every field is covered, every indoor facility is full, because of the opportunities provided for all students at the University of Washington. There is a very special feeling about a Husky football game, about Husky Stadium, about the feeling that people in Seattle and the state of Washington have about the Washington Huskies that is, again, is difficult to describe and is very special.
Homecoming brings back many of the traditions on campus, some old, like the ringing of the Denny bell.
By tradition, it is rung on at homecoming. Used to be kind of a big deal for a long time to do that, not so much anymore. I rang it for the first time in 1961, the first year of the second 100 years of the University of Washington, and I've rung it every year since.
One of the newer traditions, now copied by sports fans across the nation, started in Husky Stadium, the wave. TV personality Rob Weller was then the captain of the Yell Squad, when he and former band director Bill Bissell originated the round the stadium cheer seen everywhere. Despite other claims, the wave started here. Some other traditions, thankfully, haven't caught on. Student housing has always been a part of campus life. In territorial days, with transportation difficult, women slept in the president's house. Dorms served male students, and even then, there were complaints about dorm food. Fraternities and sororities became an early part of the university, first for housing and later for social activities. The first houses were chartered in 1902. Life at the university has mirrored history. During World War I, the first military units were formed on campus. And maneuvers were held on the football field during World War II. Famous people and presidents have come to the university. Theodore Roosevelt for the AYP exposition, John Kennedy in 1961. The U was not immune to the student unrest of the 60s and 70s. The Wall Street Journal proclaimed Seattle the bomb capital of the nation. The Ave became the home of first the fringies, then the hippies, finally the protesters. One of the main protests was over minority recruitment. A group of black student leaders occupied the president's office demanding black studies and more minority admissions.
We had to deal with the problem of racism.
Rather than call in the police riot squad, then President Odegaard was willing to talk.
There was a minority problem. The blacks, Indians, the Hispanics, that were somehow or other through the school systems not getting fully into a common system, and so that you had to figure out, now what should we do?
Well, this university took the most active affirmative action attitude towards bringing minorities into the mainstream of this society of any educational institution in the United States.
One result is the University of Washington today is far more diverse, and many of those changes that started on campus are being felt in the community. One of those protesting militants was Larry Gossett. Gossett has been elected a member of the King County Council. The 90s are a bit quieter, but the alumni return to reminisce of the good old days.
We sold out. We had longer hair when we were younger. We did more radical things, but now we all have 30-year mortgages and children, and we just have to grovel at the altar of industry and commerce, the one we said we would never grovel at.
The Husky Marching Band was an institution around our house. We've got tapes at home. So what happens to me, I got involved with the Husky Marching Band when I came onto the university. I'm also involved with an alumni association for the Husky Marching Band. We go back once a year and play. We pack our horns. We'll go to homecoming. We'll march in a torchlight parade, which is tonight.
The alumni band could find company across the nation. There are active alumni clubs in most major cities. And you could probably find someone wearing purple and gold at the alumni clubs overseas along the Pacific Rim. The University of Washington has had a colorful history, and a new group of students is ready to write the future. The University of Washington was here at the beginning, given birth by pioneer leaders who could see the future. Clarence Bagley, son of founder Daniel Bagley, was one of the first graduates. He became a historian, and writing at graduation back in 1929, hoped that someone from this class in 30 or 60 years would show that the training they received from the U would allow them to be honored for their contributions. Good prediction. They have. We can make another 30 or 60 or 100 years after this class graduates. They also will receive honor. The next century should be interesting. I'm Bruce Kinney.